Today we have a panel of very diversified experts. We're going to be talking about scams. What are scams? Who gets scammed? And what do you do if you get scammed? So today we have Susan Bach from the Better Business Bureau. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We have Jay Kirchmar from Farmer State Bank talking with us today. And we have Wes Zuby, who is an officer with the Waupaca Police Department. So it's interesting to have such a diversified group of people because all of you are touched by different types of scams. So I think, Wes, we're going to start with you just because I don't think of a policeman being touched so much by scams from the people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of scams you run into?
We run into a lot of different scams. One of the big ones here lately is your loved ones arrested in some third world country, whether that be Mexico or someplace like that, that you need to send so much money for their bond, or they're in a hospital in some country, you need to send money for the medical bills so they can be released from the hospital. That's a pretty popular one right now.
Do people actually believe those and send money?
It does happen, yes. And then normally they end up, once they realize it's a scam, then they call us. So yes, a lot of times they'll wire money to some country. Sometimes they say you need to send Walmart gift cards or something like that you need to send down there to pay the bond or pay the medical bills, pay the lawyer fees.
Now this would really scare me if you told me that they could properly identify a family member. So if they call me and say, your grandson Bob, and I actually had a grandson Bob, what is in jail in Mexico, I mean, are they able to go that far with it, or are they just leaving it a lot more vague?
It depends on if, everybody's on Facebook and everybody's on stuff like that. So even if they use a name, because you might have your grandson Bob posted in a post, have them tagged in a post, depending on where they're getting information about you. If it's through Facebook or social media, they might know that your grandson's name is Bob. So I'd still take that with a grain of salt because they might be using what you post on the internet to get that info.
And they're very clever. These people are professional scammers, and so they know, the right way to talk to you. And we've had a lot of instances where people have called the Better Business Bureau, and the opening line of the phone call was, "Hi, Grandma, it's your favorite grandson." And so then Grandma kind of fills in the blank for them, right? So that's their opening.
And that's pretty scary. Now, as the school liaison, do you run into, especially with social media and young people, do you run into any specific scams with them?
Not really directed towards the kids, to be honest with you. Obviously, social media is its own beast. I deal with that quite a bit. But from my point of view, and Better Business Bureau would probably be better overall picture of who's victimized. They're targeting older people.
Who have money.
Right.
They have the ability.
Yeah, you're not gonna get thousands of dollars out of your average teenager or anything like that.
And they come from a trusting generation. When you talk to somebody, you trust that they're telling you the truth, and so I think from the generation standpoint, that trust and wanting to talk to somebody is important. So,
well, we three, at least, you're a little bit younger, Wes, but we grew up where you could get a loan from a bank with a handshake.
Yes.
My parents did that I don't know how many times. So it is a very different generation. Today they would never think. I could never walk into your bank and say, "Hey Jay, can I have a loan?" and you'd shake my hand and say, "Not a problem."
Right.
Right?
Right. And I think that's why some of these people are victimized, is because of that. And they say, well, we don't want to contact mom and dad because we don't want to get in trouble. So they're always pointing out a reason, and that makes sense to the person that's getting scammed.
So what else do you see at the bank besides that?
We've seen lotteries where you want to publish your clearinghouse, but you need to mail us $1,500 to process that. So they're getting money out of the bank to send them cash. We've seen Reader's Digest where the same type of thing, you won Reader's Digest. None of them have entered. So that's kind of interesting. You'd win something you've never entered. But that we've had multiple people fall victim to that. Canadian lottery is another big one where you can win the Canadian lottery and get money for it. But again, send me money and then I can send you your millions. So that seems to be big. This time of year, tax time year, we see a lot of things with the IRS and people calling, and if you don't pay your taxes, you know, you're going to go to jail and you've made a mistake. We'll help you hide that mistake so the IRS doesn't, you know about it and things like that. So we just got to be careful. In the winter, you see a lot of, we'll shut off WPS. We're from WPS. We're going to shut off, you haven't paid your bill. So we see that in the summer. If it's hot, air conditioning, we're going to shut off all your power, and we need it in an hour or two. So they're always urgent. It's nothing.
Of course.
If it's that urgent, they wouldn't be calling you at that time.
But if they can create that sense of urgency, then they have you panicked. And you're far more likely to fall for it, right, Susan?
Absolutely. Yes, and we, you know, Jay, we see that scam all the time too, where we're going to cut off your power. And, you know, the Public Service Commission or the power company doesn't do that in the winter, so we know that right there, that's a red flag. But that's a scam that we see target businesses a lot because they're more apt to get like a part-time employee or somebody who's maybe a little bit more naive about how the way things work like that. But they'll say something like, we'll cut off the power, and here they're calling a restaurant that has a freezer full of food, so that's very urgent that they not cut off the power because they'd lose a lot of business that way. So don't fall for those kinds of threatening phone calls where you're in imminent danger if you don't do something, because that's exactly the moment where you should step back and say, I better check this out a little bit further.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about, what do you do in those kinds of situations, because you're absolutely right, Susan. Mm-hmm. You need to say, not a problem. I will give you a call right back. And I've done that, and of course they've hung up on me because they won't give me their phone number. But I fell for a scam when I was 20-something, and I can see young people, maybe not so much teenagers, but very young people, said, we're going to be able to give you a loan. We just need, and at that time it was $400 processing fee up front. That was a huge, I had to borrow the $400 to send it off to never see anything from them. And that was a huge lesson learned, but I was vulnerable at the time. I was 20 years old or something like that. So, we're all vulnerable enough to be able to fall for something along the line, right?
Right. I think the best rule of thumb in that situation is if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. People don't regularly just hand out money, It's to say, and like when I got my loan for my house, it's not, I had to put my down payment on the house, but I didn't have to pay them to give me the money. I put my down payment towards the loan, but that wasn't like a $1,500 processing fee for me to have to get the rest of my.
That's actually illegal because you can't charge money for a loan. I mean, with the way we see it is that somebody says you've been approved for a loan, but because you have bad credit, you have to pay 6 months worth of payments in advance. That's totally illegal. So, I mean, it is customary to have like a small processing fee or an appraisal or something like that. Those would be common, but just to require 6 months in advance is illegal.
So, we've touched everybody's life somehow, whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a young person or an older person. So it's going to be kind of interesting because we're going to come back after a short break and we are going to talk about why. Why do people, and we touched on it a little bit, but we're going to talk about what makes us vulnerable to these types of scams, because I think a lot of us say, I would never fall for that, and then 30 years later you go, I don't believe I did that. So this is What's Happening Waupaca. We are talking about scams. I'm Joni, and we'll be right back.
Wow, college already.
Yeah, we gotta go.
I love you.
I love you too, Daddy.
You're the one who saw
and thanks for everything.
Gratitude. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Welcome back to this episode of What's Happening in Waupaca. I am Joni. We are talking scams with three people that know a lot about them. Wes Zuby with the Waupaca Police Department, Jay Kirchmar with Farmer State Bank, and Susan Bach with the Better Business Bureau. We are talking all about it as far as what kind of scams and why people fall for them and what we need to do if we fall for them. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit about how do we not too, because I just learned a brand new piece of information. So I'm going to keep you in suspense about that for a little bit. But let's talk about why. Why do people fall for these scams, Jay?
Well, a lot of times they're in a hurry. You catch them at the wrong time. So they're on their way out the door, they make a quick decision, and a lot of times they regret that decision down the road. They find out if there's trauma in the family. You know, a lot of times you're not thinking clearly, or they take care, they build on your emotions. And a lot of times they do learn stuff from you because of Facebook or things on the internet, and they can learn things about you, and they use that. We're from the same state. We're veterans. That's another one that's big. I'm a veteran, you're a veteran, we're talking the same language, so they have a common bond. They're trying to always get what's the common bond to get me to trust, so you to trust me.
And that's pretty easy on social media, Facebook. I see all kinds of posts. My husband is in the hospital, send prayers. My father just died. And people are in an emotional state where they're more likely, I suppose, to not think through something. Right, Susan?
Absolutely. And I think another reason somebody falls for a scam too is because maybe they're in a hurry or they're distraught or desperate, they don't do their due diligence. I would love it if everybody called the Better Business Bureau or their local bank or their police department just to do any kind of research that they can. You know, oftentimes our number one scam last year was online scams, like purchasing something online, like a pet. And if those people had just gone online to bbb.org and ran the name of the company, you know, in our search box, they would have found out, oh, there's other people complaining about this, or, you know, they have some kind of government action against them. So I would really urge people, if something doesn't smell quite right, really, or even if it does smell okay, you should do your due diligence and check it out first. You can't do enough research, whether it's the BBB or any other, you know, just Google the company name.
But if they're saying, I'm with WPS and I'm going to shut off your power an hour if I don't get any money. No, I want to research. You know, I mean, that sounds,
Yeah.
It sounds more difficult. So what I'm assuming you should say is, that's fine, not a problem. I will give you a call right back.
And anybody who's going to come to you in an official capacity will have an ID or a badge or something. You know, check that out and know the red flags, because they're not going to require, the police department doesn't come to you and say, you missed jury duty, we need you to pay money right now. They just don't do that. So know the red flags, and programs like this where we talk about the red flags and recognizing them, that's really half the battle.
Right. Like, I think one of the things, you know, with it being tax time, we're going to see an increase in the IRS is going to issue a warrant if you don't pay this amount. This is what you owe us.
But they do that, right?
They're not going to do that over the phone. They'll you know, if you owe them money, they're going to want their money, but they're going to do it in a more official way than somebody just calling you.
They're going to send you a letter first,
right?
You know, and they're going to make multiple attempts by U.S. Postal Service to reach you.
And then they send it certified, and they say, call us or you're in big trouble.
Right.
Right.
Right. And they're not going to just call you and expect that payment over the phone. That's just not the way it works. And they're not gonna have us as the Waupaca Police Department call you and identify. You're not gonna get, hi, I'm Officer Zuby, you didn't pay the IRS, there's gonna be a warrant issued for your arrest. That's not our job. So we're not gonna call you to tell you that information. So if you get a call, because I've gotten that call on my work cell phone that they identified that they were from Waupaca Police Department, And
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
it was just they were Officer Brown from the Waupaca Police Department, and the conversation didn't last long. Once I said, I had answered my phone, hello, this is Officer Zuby, and it didn't last long, the conversation, when I pointed out again that I was a police officer for the Waupaca Police Department. And, you know, that we don't do that. Well, that's not, the IRS has never once called me and said, hey, we need your help, we need you to call this person and tell them they owe us money. That's just not in our job description, so.
And we have to keep in mind, the IRS is more powerful than the Waupaca
Right.
Police Department. You know, in my neck of the, I live in Waupaca, you should hear them try
only
to
imagine.
pronounce that city. So Jay, why do you find, because you must have customers come into the bank and say, is there any way I can get my money back? So what do you find is the reason that they fell for the scam?
Well, first thing is a lot of them don't realize it. So when they're coming to get the money, we're asking them a lot of questions, and a lot of times they don't like the extra questions. But we're trying to save them from mailing the cash, mailing their money. If they do happen to send it, if it's cash, there's nothing we can do with it. If it's something they did on their account, they sent a check or something, we can try to do a stop payment on that check if they happen to do that. But we do ask a few questions. Do you know the people you're dealing with? Did you ask for a callback number? So if somebody calls you, ask for a callback number. And then see if that callback number truly does match the business without trusting that it does. Because a lot of times they won't give you one. Or if they do give you one, it's not to the company if you look up the company.
So the proactivity that the bank uses, as far as if I walk into your bank and I say I want to withdraw $5,000, I want to wire it to here, you're going to ask me a bunch of questions, because that's like a red flag for you guys, especially if I don't do this on a...
It's not a normal habit, yes. And we do that, and people wonder why we question. Well, we're just trying to save them that money, you know. And a lot of times they just haven't thought through that process or felt pressured. Well, I got to get this out right away. I got to send this by the end of the day. Well, why do you have to send this by the end of the day? And then they kind of explain some of the scams, and we say, hey, we've seen a lot of scams with that. I think we should research this before you do that.
I can't tell you how many times somebody's called the Better Business Bureau to explain a scam, and how many scams have been foiled by a very astute, you know, bank employee, credit union employee, even a Walgreens employee. Why are you buying so many gift cards? Western Union does a good job of training their staff, and MoneyGram, you know, where is this money going, and why are you wiring a large amount of cash? So heads up to all of those bank employees. But if somebody coaches you to say, don't tell the bank employee or the teller why you're sending this money or why you need this money, you know, you should have alarm bells going off in your head, because that's another red flag for a scam.
And that's hard, because me personally, I have a really hard time with people asking those kinds of questions. So I need to have a little bit more patience when it comes to that, because I get that you guys are trying to look out for me. I just feel sometimes like I live in a world of Big Brother.
Yeah, and that's where we got to do a better job of explaining why we're doing it. We've seen scams. We just don't want you to fall victim to that, and we just want to try to help in that process. And I would say, unfortunately, 85 to 90% of those conversations are dealing with scams. There isn't a legitimate reason behind it. So.
And you know, most tellers know your customers well enough. I mean, there's so much going on with internet banking now that if you come in every single week and you withdraw $400 or whatever, I mean, that's something that's pretty commonplace, right?
Right.
So then your red flag would be if they came in and all of a sudden withdrew $4,000.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we just try to ask a few simple questions, and if the person knows what they're doing and understands it, then we move on. If they have more questions and we try to tell them we've seen this, we've seen it with a number of customers.
So I think that what I'm hearing around the table from all of you is that the biggest reason that people fall for scams is because they're in a hurry, or they are worried or panicked, right? Wes, is
Right.
that?
Right, I'd agree with that.
Okay, okay. So we need to take a step back and we need to say, I need to check this out. And it doesn't matter if they've told me that I have an hour or not, I still have an hour to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And-
When was the last time you got a energy bill or a bill from the hospital or a bill from in any way, shape, or form that when you opened that bill it said it was due in an hour?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's always that time. Like any place expects that it might take you at least a couple of days to make your payment. They're not going to give you a 1 hour notice that okay you have to pay it in an hour.
And again, they've sent numerous,
Right.
they've either called and said, call us back at this number, or they've sent letters and said, we need to take care of this, right? Okay, got it. All right, next we are going to talk about what we can do if we actually fall for a scam. And I think that the biggest thing we all need to keep in mind is that we are all vulnerable to it in one way, shape, form, or another. I mean, there's a scam out there that every single one of us would fall for. Do we all agree?
Yes.
So, so we're going to talk about that when we come back in just a moment. This is Joni. You're watching What's Happening in Waupaca, and we are talking about scams.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. Those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know wherever you are.
Welcome to What's Happening in Waupaca. I am Joni. Today we are talking about scams, and we are going to go into what we do if we actually fall for one. And we ended the last segment saying all of us are vulnerable to some type of scam. I mean, all of us can fall for it. So I don't think it's something we need to be embarrassed about. But we are talking with a group of people that know a lot about scams. We're talking with Jay Kirchmar from Farmer State Bank, Wes Zuby with the Waupaca Police Department, and Susan Bach with the Better Business Bureau. So tell me, folks, what do I do if I've fallen for one? We have talked about go talk to your bank. Try to get, if you sent a check, try to get that, put a stop payment on it. But what do we do if the money is already gone?
Well, I guess from a banking standpoint, contact your bank. That's the number one thing, and work with them. If you've given account information out, online banking account information, any type of passwords that might get access to your accounts, contact your bank. We will close the account and reopen another account, and that will hopefully stop things before they happen. The best thing is to communicate that. A lot of people feel embarrassed and they don't want to talk about it, but if we can stop it earlier, there will be less losses.
Because if the money is gone, is it gone? I mean, if I have wired money or sent a cashier's check or cash or check and it's already out of my account, is there really any way for me to get it back?
No, but a lot of scams we see is with a debit card, and they keep using the debit card. Well, if you contact your bank, a lot of those can be reversed and handled that way. But from a cash standpoint, checks, you have a chance with stop payments, but if it's just cash or you're giving your account information out, definitely get that account closed, open a new one, and start with that one so you don't have that information out there that they'll use.
And don't ever give out account information. I mean, it's easy enough for them, because I had a credit card thing go on with me several years ago, and this is the thing with scams, is that sometimes you don't even know that they're happening. I am one of those people who is guilty of not checking every single thing on a credit card or something every single month. We should be doing that, by the way. And so what this gal did was she did a $1 charge on my credit card for 6 months in a row. And then because she got away with it, it went up to $30 a month. And it still took me a couple of months to catch it. And what happened was I called the company and they said, well, it's this gal. She's from the south side of Chicago. Do you know her? And I said, no. I mean, they knew her name, they knew where she worked, they knew where she was making the charges, and they did credit my charge card for all of that money. But that's a charge card. That's not a checking account, so that can be a little bit different, right?
Absolutely. What we see is people can buy stolen credit card numbers on the internet, and they'll purchase a card number and then make a small charge, like $1, just to see if it's good. And once they know it's good, then they'll hit you for the big expense.
And they'll typically do it over the weekend. So like from our debit card transactions, they'll do it over the weekend because no one's at the bank. So you don't have until Monday or to see those transactions. And if you're not monitoring it through online banking, mobile banking, those types of things, you won't notice that there's transactions happening after the $1 charge, because we see that a lot. If you're seeing $1 charge or small minimum charges, they're testing your account. They're testing to see what they can get.
So the lesson here is, Joni, watch your balances, right? Pay attention. And that's one of the reasons we shouldn't have, you know, a wallet full of charge cards. Right, Wes?
Right.
Is because it just makes it that much more difficult to monitor what's going on with them.
Right.
And this is a credit bureau thing. I mean, Experian, wasn't it Experian that
Yes,
just got
the data breach?
Yes. Wells Fargo, the FBI has been hit. And so I don't think there's anything that's 100% safe. And I know that one of the things they said was they can sit on this information for years before they actually use it, right?
Yeah, because typically what ends up happening is you get free credit monitoring for a year. So they'll wait until that is up and people forget about it. And we've seen that with the Target breach. They waited for almost a year and a half to 2 years, and all of a sudden we started seeing a flood of things happening. And so they're patient with it. They can sell it on the dark web. There's a lot of bad things happening out there, and you just need to protect yourself. And the best way to do that is know what's going on in your accounts, know what's going on with what you're doing, ask questions.
Open them up, keep an eye on your balance.
I wouldn't even wait until, you know, it is printed and mailed to you at the end of the month. I check mine every day. I really do.
Do you? And check what charges have been against? Do you do that with your charge cards as well as your...
Well, because everything is online now, so it's so much easier. And when they mail you your statement, you know, and put it in your mailbox at the end of that's another risk of identity theft. So I know a lot of people don't trust having those things delivered to them online, but I think it's safer, actually.
Because?
Well, because a paper statement with your account number, even though it's probably only the last 4 digits of your account number, I mean, mail can be stolen and is stolen all the time. So if you use a secure website and you have virus protection on your computer, you know, you can have access to your charge and your bank account statements every day. And then you're very quick to spot something that is wrong.
So Wes, do you check your statements? Do you check your accounts every day? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you check your accounts every day?
If not every day, at least a couple times a week. Normally I log in online daily just to make sure everything's, you know, whether it's, okay, make sure that auto pay got withdrawn or whatever it might be, but I check quite frequently.
Okay, and as a banker, if you don't say yes, I'm going to worry.
I'm pretty lucky because that's what I work in on a daily basis, so I'm seeing that information. But I would highly recommend I do exactly what you're talking about. Recommend that to all customers because you have access where you didn't before. You have a lot more access to information. Keep an eye on that. We've caught fraud. We caught a fraud. Somebody got hacked into their computer and money had taken out, and because they were doing their online banking, they said that's not right, and we were able to stop it on that day. But if they wouldn't have checked it that day, the money would have been gone, and they wouldn't have even known it had happened. So
don't do it, Joni, and wait a few months. And I don't know, I think because it was handled so quickly, I don't know that I have been a whole lot more careful since, but I do get into my bank account because I do so much online. So I know within a couple of bucks of, you know, how much is supposed to be in there or on my charge card balance. So you did some reports. Last week was, let's see if I remember this, National Consumer Protection Week.
Yes.
I remembered that.
Good job.
Yeah, really. And so you had some reports about the riskiest scams.
So we time an annual report based around the release of National Consumer Protection Week, where we take data from our online portal called Scam Tracker, where a consumer or anybody can go and either report a scam or look to see what kind of scams are happening in their area. And based on that data, we release a report that names the riskiest scams of the year. And by risky, we mean not only how frequently they were reported, but when they were reported, how often did the victim actually fall for it? And when they did fall for it, how much money did they lose? So those three factors, frequency, susceptibility, and monetary loss, is what we came up with as the riskiest scams.
So what are the riskiest scams?
Online shopping was number one, and we've talked about it here already, when people are selling something on Craigslist, or they're buying, you know, cosmetics or vitamin products where there's a free trial offer, but it's not really free because you gave your credit card number for shipping and handling, and you were unaware that you signed up for regular monthly shipments. So that was a common scam. Number two was investment scams, where people think that they're, you know, investing in a sure thing. And then number three was employment scams, where somebody you know, thought they were applying for a job, but it's really, you know, a ploy to get their personal information, or they're told that before that they can get this job, they have to pay for a background check or something, and that's just like an overpayment scam.
So, and we haven't talked about investment scams at all, because that's more than likely the older population, correct?
Yes.
Because they're the ones that have been putting away money for most of their adult life. So is this a once in a while, 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, or is it far more?
The reason it made our list is not because it happens so frequently, but when it does happen, the monetary losses are huge, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So do your due diligence when you're picking out an investor. Make sure that they're properly licensed, you know, because it is a very regulated industry. So you want to make sure that they have a license, that they don't have any, you know, any concerns that you should be made aware of.
And no, I'm big on meeting people. So if I wanted to work with an investment person, I would actually walk into their office and sit down with them, because I don't have a tendency to trust large amounts of money to anybody online, because I can't see you, and because if I'm unhappy with you, I'm likely to get a better response if I can actually walk into your office, right?
I would agree.
You know, so online banks are, and I know there are online banks and there are good online banks, but it's still kind of nice to have the familiarity of being able to park in front and walk in there and talk to somebody, right?
Yeah, I think that's why people live in the community of Waupaca and Waupaca and Iola and the surrounding areas, because they can go in and talk to people. And the nice thing is you have the ability to do things online, but after you meet the people, then you have both. You can do it online and talk to them in person.
I agree. So Wes, tell me, now I've been scammed. Yeah, let's talk about how many times people have tried. I've only fallen once, but you know, it happens to me probably 2, 3, 4 times a year, seriously, that I have yet to get a dead relative in Zimbabwe. I've yet to get that phone call, but I've won trips, and I've sold little VW Jettas to people in California. I've done all kinds. You sold a boat to somebody in England that was going to drive it home.
Well, he wanted our boat, but we didn't sell it to him.
So Wes, if something has happened to me, do I call you when someone has tried but I haven't fallen for it? Do I call you when they've given me a number to call and I want to check it out? Or do I call you after I've lost my money?
Any of the above. So if you have a question as to if it's a scam or not, feel free to call us. Chances are we've dealt with it. We'll tell you, yeah, that's a scam. We're aware of it. Don't give them money. We'll take the information if they gave you a phone number, if whatever what's on the caller ID. Chances are it's a burner number that they just typed into a computer and it's not a real phone number.
Oh, you got to tell me about that whole police call. I mean, we talked about that a few minutes ago, but you as a police officer got a call from a police officer,
Yep.
and it was a scam.
Right. So with technology now, I can put in a number that looks like I'm calling from Waupaca Police Department into a different cell phone. So your caller ID says Waupaca Police Department and has our phone number. So don't always trust that number, and chances are, even if you get it, it's probably not going to be a real number. If you lost money, we can assist you in pointing you in the right direction, whether it be, hey, make sure you contact your bank, see if they can help you, Better Business Bureau. The last fraud I actually handled myself, it was, I call it the shell game. It's stolen credit card information, but then they ship it to an address, and then that person thinks they're working from home because it's the working from home scam, and their job is to unpack it, repack it, ship it to another address. So that'll float around to a different couple addresses. The actual person gets it, returns that for money. So like that, I contacted the U.S. Postal Service, the postal inspector in Green Bay, so that he could start his investigation. We can always help you, whatever part of that scam you're a part of, we can help you get you to the right people, because we deal with it quite a bit, that we know, okay, the Better Business Bureau is where this needs to go, or hey, let's contact your bank, we'll help you get in contact with your bank. We will assist you in getting you in contact with the person that needs to know about this.
And I got to tell you honestly that it wouldn't, if somebody was trying to pull a scam on me, it wouldn't automatically occur to me to call the police and report it there. And that probably makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right, because we deal with it so frequently that, chances are when you call us because you got that phone call that your relative's in jail and you need a post bond, chances are we've dealt with it before, so that, we have that little bit of background. And even if that specific officer might not know, there's a ton of us that, I can ask my sergeant, hey, have you heard of this? What should I do with this? That we have enough people that have the experience that we can get you to the right person.
Okay, so if I have this right, if I've learned anything today, it's an if, but if I've learned anything today, it's that there are all types of scams. And I think one of the things that that I want to touch on pretty briefly is that scams are changing, and scammers are ahead of, I mean, you hear about them after the fact, you hear about them after the fact, you hear about them after the fact. It's impossible, from what I've learned, to be proactive enough with computer programs to stop someone from hacking in or stealing. And it's impossible to stay ahead of it because they're coming up with ideas that haven't been thought of by the people that are trying to combat the scams. And it's not a blaming thing with me, but I think that with companies, whether it's a bank or whether it's the police department, you're dealing with what has happened, and as much as you try to have red flags, it's impossible to figure out what they're going to do next.
Yeah, for every time you have a scam, there's another build off of that scam, and the key are the scams are similar, and understanding the similar, and does this make sense? Remove yourself, ask somebody else. When you ask somebody else, sometimes you go, oh, just yourself, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? Mm-hmm. So I think, but there are similarities with all these scams. They all kind of have the same, but they move it to a different group of people or a different clientele.
Or they add something like being able to call from my local exchange. Right. They have a new computer program, and and again, it's not about the Farmer State Bank or Waupaca Police Department not doing the work to try to be proactive. Experian, look at what happened there. Wells Fargo, the FBI. It's just very difficult to try to be proactive when it comes to scams. So we've talked about all the different types of scams. essentially somebody wants my money, or they're going to try to take my money. I mean, that's really what it's about. So whether I get a phone call or whether I get an email with somebody trying to buy something online, the best thing I can possibly do is to step back for a moment, think about it, and start making some phone calls or start doing some research. And I always get a return phone. If they call me, I always get a return phone number, because they're going to hang up on you if what they're after is scamming, right? Everybody can be scammed. We learned that today. It isn't age prejudice. It isn't income prejudice. And I would say that teenagers are pretty susceptible to it, simply because there's so much information put on social media. I mean, I look at some of this stuff and say, yeah, that was probably not a really good idea. And if I think I'm going to get scammed, or if I think I was scammed, what I need to do is I need to call somebody immediately. I need to call the Better Business Bureau to report it. I need to call the police department, because you can pretty much tell me what's going on. And I call my bank. That's important, because you guys can put a stop on my account or change account numbers, which is a pain in the butt, but it protects the money that I work so hard for.
And I think one important point to make is, you may have been scammed by somebody who you know is overseas, and you think, oh, they'll never be able to get my money back, or the money's gone, I'll never get it back. You know, overseas scammers are prosecuted, and they have been brought to justice. It's very difficult to do, but it is definitely worth your time and effort to report it to the Better Business Bureau, your local police department, the FBI, so that they can analyze what's happening, how to protect other people, you know, how should we spend our money to protect people. So don't be too embarrassed to report it or anything like that, because you can stop them, bring them to justice, possibly get your money back. It's not without, you know, within the realm of possibility. And don't be too embarrassed to report it.
And it's more than that, because you guys don't know what is going on as far as the scammers. If those of us that have fallen victim, or somebody has tried, haven't taken the time to report it. And that's where all of the reports come from, is people that have called.
Right.
So to stop feeling like we're going to get ignored or we're going to get laughed at, we need to start making the phone calls, right?
Right.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me. All right, we're going to wrap it up for this episode of What's Happening in Waupaca. We have been talking scams. I'll bet you it's something we could talk about for another 2 or 3 hours without getting through all of it. I'm glad you joined us today for this. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Susan. It's been a wonderful conversation. We'll see you next time on What's Happening in Waupaca. I'm Joni.